to Lunch and Learn. This semester, we're talking about the human at the center of education because we have such a tech-driven world that we can get caught up in the technology and thinking about, well, and right now with artificial intelligence, with AI, what do we do with that? How do we incorporate that? How do we ignore it? What do we do? We don't know what to do with that. We're trying to come up with some ideas here. We're also thinking about how do we remember that there are people actually involved in this educational process, our students in particular, but also the instructors, helping to make sure that we're keeping the humans at the center of everything that we do. Today, we're talking about when technology gets stuck, because sometimes technology is really great and sometimes it is not. So in the chat, or you can feel free to unmute, please share an example of an epic fail that you had with technology. What is something that you tried to do with technology and it just didn't work?
Well, this was recent, but set up too many concurrent Zoom meetings on my account.
Excellent. And if you have too many of them, and because you work with a lot of people, then they saw this, they said, oh, you need to end somebody else's meeting before you can start your own. And some people chose to do that. And then the people who were in the meeting said, what the heck? Where's my meeting? Excellent. Couldn't get a video to play that was crucial. What was the issue with that, Celeste?
It wasn't operator error like I just had, but yeah, there was something going on that, I had to call IT, but it was like, every minute counts in class, and thank God for our IT people support us. It got fixed eventually.
Excellent, excellent. So they were pretty quick to come and figure out what the issue was and troubleshoot. Fabulous. I see some marketing emails. Oh no. Some of that with the banner communication, oh, what was that? What was that?
No, it's that Microsoft Outlook only allows so many recipients per email.
So when you're trying to send out a blast, yeah, okay, got it. It doesn't necessarily get everywhere. And Christina said sometimes even making course items visible, that your students will contact you and say, I can't see the quiz. And you say, yes, you can. I can see it. Why can't you see it? And then finally you see that little eyeball icon. Excellent, excellent. But it's good that you know to troubleshoot for that and you know what to do with that. It was interesting because when I was coming up with this presentation, sometimes I do work with ChatGPT and I say, okay, I've got this idea for this presentation that I want to do. I want to talk about when technology doesn't work, when it works, when it doesn't. How do you make the decision between how do you use the technology and how do you decide when it's better not even to use it? And I'm talking through the prompt with ChatGPT, and I said, and give me an idea. I need kind of an example that I could use, a kind of funny example I could use. So that's why you see an octopus here in a wrestling outfit, because that was one of the things that it suggested, that sometimes a tool, a technology tool, it can feel like absolute magic. It's perfect. It's the perfect fit. It does exactly what you want it to do. It connects with your students. It connects with you, or it connects with your job tasks. And then other times it's like wrestling an octopus, is what ChatGPT said. So I asked Canva, I said, can you please create a picture for me of an octopus that is wrestling in the ring? And this is what it gave me. So sometimes technology can be helpful. And there's other times that it gives suggestions to me and I say, yeah, no, that's too bad, because it doesn't really have a sense of humor. So I'm trying to work through that. I also see looking at operation systems, trying to get them in place, but they're not always compatible with our other pieces that we have. And we run into that. We're not always able to predict every way that things will interact. And the other day when the internet was spotty, there were difference with that, or things would take forever to load. And I was working with a faculty member through Zoom, and they were trying to get a page to load, and we were sitting there having conversations about our entire lifespan as this page is loading. It was crazy. So, okay, good. So you've all had some kind of experience when technology didn't quite work. So we'll talk about some of that today. In our agenda, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to frame this challenge. How do we overcome technology when it's stuck, or how do we prevent that stuckness I just created that word. You can use it. It's okay. How do we prevent that stuckness in the future if we can? We want to be able to find a balance between where is technology helpful and when is it not. And I have a few guiding questions you can think about when you're evaluating technology, when you want to use it. And I even have a little Tech Rubric, and it's super simple and modifiable, but it's just a way that you can get that conversation started in your head if you want some specific things, characteristics to evaluate. So let's look at framing this challenge. We're going to take a moment. We're just going to step back and we're going to think about not just individual tools, but the whole idea of education, really, and how technology fits into it. There are lots of technology options, and it's easy to feel like we have to try them all. Oh, look, oh, there's this newest tool. There's this newest thing. We have to hurry up and try it, even before we can totally understand it. If we don't try it, we're behind the times. We have to try it. If we don't, it's a problem. But it's not always about having the newest tool. It's really making sure that we have the right tool for the situation. And this is a kind of a fun analogy to think about. It's a little bit like cooking. So you don't use every spice in your cabinet every time you make dinner. And we talked about some places where you might try something new. I was watching one of those cooking shows, and they made a chili, and they put some cinnamon in it. And all the judges wrote, I can't believe they did that. And then by the time they tried it, they said, oh, it's kind of good, actually. It worked. It worked with the rest of the ingredients. But then there's other times that spice isn't quite going to work. So for instance, peppercorns in your pumpkin pie, it might not be the taste you're going for. So it's recognizing when it's a spice that can be added, maybe even an unexpected benefit from it. But then it's also recognizing that sometimes we just don't need it, whether we're online, hybrid, or in person. And even if something, even if it tastes good, this was one of the things when we were talking about this presentation, Christina had mentioned, even if it does taste good, let's pretend you put those peppercorns in that pumpkin pie and you take one taste and you go, yeah, actually, it's not as bad as I thought it would be. It's a little bit good, but you might not want to eat the whole pie, because it's a little bit as good. We don't need it everywhere also. So we can be strategic about how and when we use it. Have you ever tried lobster ice cream, by the way? Has bits of lobster in it? Yeah, I don't recommend it. It wasn't very good. So that was something in Maine that I tried. But I have tried mushroom ice cream from the Mushroom Festival, and surprisingly, it was very tasty. So there are some things out there. Okay, enough about the food, because it's nearly lunchtime and we'll all get too hungry anyway. But we do want to find balance. And we've all been there, right? That we've been juggling things. We say, oh my gosh, I have to have quizzes and discussion boards, and I have to have video content. I have to be able to grade different kinds of test questions. I have to remember accessibility. Can't forget accessibility. And we're trying to do all of these things while we're actually even trying to teach the material. So sometimes it feels like that technology is running around us, and it's making us do what it wants us to do instead of us being able to use technology as a tool. So this challenge is really making sure that we're looking at engagement, innovation, efficiency of the tool, but recognizing that it doesn't always work well for the task or for that group of students. And this is one thing that we were talking about when we were planning this presentation, is that even from semester to semester, so I noticed it when I was teaching abnormal psychology, that one semester with this cohort of students, they were all pretty good at creating those infographics in Canva. They had the idea, they didn't really need a whole lot of support. But then my next cohort, about 3/4 of them said, what is that? I'm overwhelmed. I don't know how to do this. I don't know what to do with it. So they needed much more support, a different level of presentation to help them get to that task. And trying to decide too, for one of the people, I just said, you know what? Go ahead and create your PowerPoint. It's fine. Go ahead, do something different, because this is the task is not learning to use Canva. It was just supposed to be a fun way to show me what you know, and this isn't fun anymore. So let's figure out what the actual purpose is for what I'm trying to do. And we have to think about how some tools might really support accessibility beautifully, making sure that all students can access it, either whether they're sight impaired, hearing impaired, maybe they have some processing difficulties. There's lots of ways that that could be. But we want to make sure that we still have some of that engagement as well. So our focus today is finding that balance between innovation, accessibility, human connection, making sure that everything works well together. So here's a few guiding questions for you to think about. And this helps us sort through all of that. And this is supposed to help us think about evaluating technology tools in a simpler, intentional way. And they help you quickly decide which tools are worth your time and which ones might be just shiny distractions. So we can think about, does this tool really help my students learn more easily? And this can be related to accessibility. So is it too hard clicking through it? Or does it give images that other people can't understand if they're sight impaired, something like that, and I don't have a way to support it well? So this is accessibility. The second one, does it create more connection or does it create more clutter? That's about engagement. How am I getting my students involved? So is it just kind of this noisy thing that we're all trying to do and it's because it's fun, or do I have a real purpose behind it? And then the third one is, does it include everyone, or is it unintentionally leave some students behind? And some of that is for connection. So, and we see this, for instance, even in our classroom discussions, if we have a face-to-face class and we have everyone talking, and we have some people who are like me, who talk a lot, and they'll contribute often to the discussion. But then we have some people who might be just a little more quiet, a little more laid back. Amanda tends to be a little bit more quiet and laid back, but she has beautiful gems to offer. But we have to give her those opportunities to offer her thoughts. So maybe there are different ways to make sure that I'm connecting with everyone in my class. So let's look at these just a little bit deeper. So the first one was that accessibility thing. We want to think about, does this tool make learning more accessible? Does it work for screen readers? Does it provide captions, those closed captions for videos? Can I access it on multiple devices? It was amazing because I had done lunch and learns before with Carrie Ann Sparks, if you remember Carrie Ann when she was in here. And we talked a lot about how so many students access classes on their phone. I don't know how they do it, but they write essays on their phone. And I know we can get into all that, copy paste stuff, but that's not what I'm talking about here. They are able to type in that little screen. My son teases me because I am a one thumb typer, and I get cramps in my thumb sometimes too, because I need to learn to use both of them. But I am not that great at typing on that little screen. And in fact, when I was grading assignments, I can't grade essays on my phone. But I can grade discussion boards on my phone. It just shows up differently and the interface is different and I can respond differently. But when I want to annotate a text, I want to do all these things, I need that bigger screen. So it's helping to make sure that it works in multiple devices for students for different reasons that they might want to access that material at different times of the class. So they might not even be on their phone all the time, but we did find out a large number of students, like 80%, access on the phone most of the time. And then as far as accessibility goes, it's not just compliance, because if there's legal ramifications or anything like that, we know that accessibility opens the door to the course and makes it available to students. So there's a thing called a VPAT, and you may have heard of this before, but that stands for Voluntary Product Accessibility Template, and VPAT, VPAT. It's a standardized document that's used to report a product's compliance with accessibility standards. If you might not have been aware, there's something called Section 508 standards. There's also Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. We call them WCAG. And then it's funny because when we make these videos and we want to do the closed captions for it, WCAG would always screw it up and would spell it 6 different ways in the thing. So that's why you have to review your closed captions. But Christina said, actually, the closed captioning is getting better and recognizing that WCAG, when we say WCAG, that's what we mean. And that's kind of exciting. But it's completed by whoever created it. For instance, if Padlet, which is an online bulletin board, created their product, then they can do this voluntary product accessibility template and give themselves grades according to certain standards. So they can say that they support they partially support, they do not support, or they feel that it's not applicable for them. And generally they give explanations for those conformance levels. So you can do some research when you're finding these new tools to see, do they have a VPAT and are they compliant with Section 508 or with WCAG standards? Is this tool helping me make my educational process, my instructional materials more accessible for my students, or is it hindering it? And Jen said that she also agrees with Christina that WCAG is coming up in those auto captions. So that's nice. It's learning some new things. But I will tell you, it never knew how to spell Carrie Ann either. I had to correct her name throughout the entire transcript. It was pretty crazy. The next thing to talk about is that engagement. So does it enhance engagement or does it just add work? So does it deepen understanding or is it just flashy? So we were talking about, for instance, when I first learned PowerPoint years ago, admittedly, but they had all those transitions between the slides and it would go crazy and you could have sliding bars and things flying in. And even with Canva, they had some interesting things where the slideshow would come in and it would move. And I thought, this is so cool. But I realized that it's pretty distracting and doing too much of that actually can take away from the message. Some can emphasize, but again, remember we talked about that strategic use. And when we were talking about this, Christina and Pauline both had some examples to share. Pauline was talking about Prezi. Anyone remember Prezi? We have a thumbs up. I see some head nods. And Pauline says, eh. Okay, Pauline, do you want to share what you thought of Prezi?
Yeah, it was just funny when we were going over this the other day, and this came to mind, that just flashy Prezi. I literally could not take it. It was I deal with vertigo, so just seeing the transitions flying in and out, the instructor or the presenter literally lost me from the first slide, because I was just like, no, I can't deal with this. So I just was like, never again. If anybody says they are presenting Prezi, pass.
Fabulous. And if anyone's not familiar with Prezi, it's this, for me, I kind of loved it, like that academic, whatever, that it can take something larger. And then there are those picture books. I love these picture books. I'm an old reading teacher, where you can zoom in smaller, smaller, smaller to the little amoeba in the water. You can zoom out to the universe. And that's what it reminded me of. But it goes very quickly through those transitions. And for some people like Pauline, you can begin, or Celeste even said, you can feel dizzy. And it can feel overwhelming as these things are sliding around, moving around. Christina, you had something else that you had shared too.
Yeah, I just shared a basic Google Slides. So back in COVID times when we were teaching online, I remember kind of losing my mind, and just to entertain myself and all the black screens I had to talk to, I ended up making these presentations. And the one that I remember is, it was all cactuses. There's cactus background, there's cactus font, there's cactus numbers, there's cactus bullets, and we all got a good laugh out of it until I got to the next lesson, which was all pineapples. And I was, teaching, and I told my students, okay, think back to the last lesson when we talked about XYZ. And one of my students said, I don't remember XYZ, I just remember the cactuses. And then I realized, oh no, the fun, cute images on my screen were taking away from the actual instruction I was doing. And I thought too, I had a lot of students who were multilingual, who were, English as a second language. And that's an extra step for them too, because they hear what I'm saying and they're looking at a picture of a cactus, even if it's just a cute little icon in the corner. They have to take that extra step of, what does that have to do with anything? Oh, nothing. It just adds to cognitive load.
Excellent. And I love that you mentioned cognitive load. That's something for us to be really cognizant of. How much information are we providing? Go ahead, Christina.
I will get on my soapbox again. I see in the chat, there was a Bitmoji push a few years ago. Oh yes, I have gone on some serious rants about Bitmojis because they are also very fun. But again, people went a little bit overboard with them. So I have very strong feelings about Bitmojis.
And if there's anyone who doesn't know Bitmojis, they tend to be cartoon representations of someone at their purest form. So you can put something in there and it can kind of personalize your course. And I use some Bitmojis every once in a while. But there were these things called Bitmoji classrooms that people built, and you could mouse over things and click on different, and it was almost like a treasure hunt. You had to find where the links were, and they had books on the shelf, and they had all these crazy things. It was overload for me. It was just too much. And that, I don't know if that's what Celeste was referring to, but it was. Oh, and Christina says, and it was an accessibility nightmare because of all of the finding, clicking things that you couldn't use a keyboard to go from one thing to the next.
Not only that, but if you went to copy a class for somebody else, then you had to change all those darn things.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, and all the Bitmojis inside there and things like that. Yeah, they'd say, well, Dr. Mosick, you look different today. Excellent. So here's an idea though. We talked about the epic fail with technology. Let's get a little positive here. We just talked about a couple ideas, and I want to give you a chance to interact. What's one tool that you've used? It can be something that we mentioned already, or something that we haven't, that saves you time and helps your students engage. What's a tool that you have found successful? This is a nice way that we can build some ideas together in this group. Ah, I see Mentimeter and Slido. Typically,
but
those
you have to have internet.
well, true. You need internet for that. Those are interactive polling tools, really, that you can ask them for. It can be quizzes, kind of, but it can also be just a poll, right, Celeste? And then we have Kahoot. Oh, we have Kahoot in there, yep. And Kahoot's changed, though. It's not as free as it was before, I think. It's a little more limited in what they let you do, but there's cool things to do, but you have to pay to be able to do them. We've got Padlet to allow students to share and engage everything in one place. That's that bulletin board. And that Padlet link that you see and what Christina posted is the link to the presentation that she gave at the last Lunch and Learn about Padlet, if you would like to learn some more. Well, I mean, I have found that even for me in Brightspace, using discussion boards has been a nice place for me. And I know that we have mixed emotions about discussion boards. It kind of depends on how you use them, what you do with them. But I like them because my Amandas in my class, who have beautiful things to say, have a place to say them. And they might not be able to say them when we're face to face because it's hard for them to get the word in edgewise. They just don't want to compete for that. It's either not worth it, or they can't do it. We have some people maybe processing or language differences that it has a hard time speaking up in that breakneck pace of a discussion. But when you have an online discussion board, and then if you're grading them, I like that there are rubrics that I can attach, and it will put the grade in the grade book for me. So I don't have to have it in some separate place. I don't have to have all these things. I like annotations on the papers, because when someone gives me a paper, I'm also an old English teacher, that I like being able to write comments on the page for the students so they can really get my feedback where it belongs. Not just overall feedback. So there's a couple tools for me that have saved me some time. I don't have to print out a paper, write on it, upload it. I don't have to worry about losing those papers because I have a bunch of them, or losing a page because it falls out, something like that. So I do like some of these digital tools for things like that. And AI can help. What do you use it to help with, out of curiosity?
Group activities in class. Sometimes, you know, just whatever, all kinds of things, writing activities, sometimes independent work, you know, just getting and working on something, chunking it out.
Nice. Okay. And Nella said everything. AI can help with everything.
I do. I often, as operations, I often have to send emails to students who are not who are not successful in their courses, you know, who are at jeopardy of failing a course. And so I have to address it, and they have to be individualized, right? It can't just be a template, even though I can use a little bit of a template, but it has to be individualized, and everybody's situation is different. But you want to be empathetic. And sometimes, you know, and often we use very academic wording that can turn a student away, or they don't even understand. Sometimes I get into some of my students, especially in the workforce development, they'll use emails as text messaging. Like literally you will send them an email, right? And it says, you know, you're at failure of failing your course, or you're at jeopardy of failing your course, and you give them all the reasons why we need them to kind of step up. And then they'll ask one question, one sentence, right? And I'll respond thoughtfully. And then they'll send another email with one question. I'm like, okay, now this is no longer productive at this point, you know. But yes, I do use AI a lot, because I have to make sure that how I'm saying it comes across correctly, because I don't want to be offensive. I don't want to be harsh. I want to be empathetic. So
I love that you say that. I have used it before to say, what's a nicer way to say blah, blah, something like that. And how it helped me. And I told you, it helped me with an analogy for this, of an octopus as a wrestler, right? Or wrestling an octopus. Every once in a while, I'll say, well, I have this idea that I want to try. But I love, Nella, that you pointed out that personalization of those emails, because if the student's in jeopardy of failing and now they're getting a boilerplate email, I don't feel like anyone really is concerned about me at this point. I'm just getting this thing that says student name here by accident. And it's nice that you're taking that time to at least put some personalization in there to help the students feel like they are seen and supported. Thanks for doing that, Nella.
And AI's not perfect either.
Oh yeah.
There's times where I reread it, I'm like, this is not quite what I want to say either. So
perfect. And I love that you point out that you reread it. You're getting gold stars for all of the other sessions that we've done too. You're underlining those things and you're setting us up for new ones that we're going to do too. Thanks, Nella.
Sorry.
No, you get gold star for real. I don't mean that in a bad way. Absolutely. But when I give gold stars out, it's reasonable. Do you remember, anyone in here, how wonderful it was to get stickers on your paper? We still like stickers on our paper. We still do. I don't care if we're adults. Our stickers on our paper just look different now. That's it. All right. And remember, that third question was about connection. So does it allow me to maintain a connection with my students? Does it make a space for student voices like those discussion boards in Brightspace? Does it allow for instructor presence also? Because again, one of the things we've talked about in this series is that instructors, and Christina mentioned COVID, when we all of a sudden went online, for some instructors, it felt very disembodying, disengaging. They had trouble feeling like they had a place in that online classroom because everything was online then, and they had trouble feeling like they connected with students because there were black rectangles on the thing with just maybe a name or maybe a picture if they went that far, you know, but it was very difficult to feel that connection. And some of those things are remaining online. And it's recognizing ways that we can build connection with students. And we even talked about this a couple of sessions ago, that we all know that we've had in-person teachers who we still felt were mailing it in. They weren't connecting with us. So it's just recognizing how do we build that microcosm for that moment in time in our course that might live beyond us. Because then I just built a relationship between Nella and Pauline. I helped them find each other somehow by this community building. And then they go on to other classes together and they support each other in their classes. And then they go to each other's weddings and, you know, things like that. And it's just a lovely holiday thing that happens. But you don't know the influence that you'll have later on in life. And your students also would like to make connections with you because you are the expert in that field, in that course. They want to know what you know so they can be more successful. They want to make connections to learn from you about professional expertise, and giving them that opportunity to connect with you professionally is a fabulous gift that you can give your students. Now, I promised you an EdTech rubric. This is going to be a very simple EdTech rubric to help analyze it. So now you've got some questions you can think about, because some people prefer to think about things in questions. And then sometimes I like a spreadsheet. So I created something that looks more like a rubric spreadsheet that has three parts of it. So if we look, here's, for instance, something we can think about. Accessibility, because we do need to look at accessibility whenever we're using any of these tools. And if it's not accessible, we need to figure out what's an alternative way that we can make sure that it is accessible. So some things we might make sure that if it's an image, if it's a picture, we have a text-based representation of what is in that image, but we're making sure we're not just saying, oh, a dog in a field. If our purpose for it is recognizing that dogs are creating a problem because they're eating the eggs of the kiwi, and so now the kiwi is, becoming more endangered, then we want to make sure that that educational purpose, dogs are often infringing on habitats of kiwis, right? As this dog is in a field. So it's not just the fact that the dog is in a field, we're giving them that purpose of why we included it for a sighted individual. Sometimes it's just a lovely image, like a Bitmoji of me. I don't necessarily have to describe that unless I'm holding a sign that is important, that says remember, something like that. But if it's just a cartoon representation of me and it's really just decoration, I can mark that as decoration because there really is no instructional purpose for it. It was just supposed to be visually interesting. If I read it with a screen reader and now I'm saying Bitmoji of Dr. Thompson, that is just noise for the person in the screen reader. So it's being strategic. Okay, so let's think about, and then there's engagement, which we talked a lot about, in human connection. So let's think about Padlet. Padlet is that online bulletin board. And let's think about the accessibility for Padlet. Now, again, you can look at that last Padlet presentation that we had if you want to get some more information about what that was. But Padlet gives us the idea that it is somewhat accessible. Christina, did you want to talk to it at all? Any of its biggest, greatest benefits and any potential drawbacks that it has?
Yeah, absolutely. So I looked into Padlet's VPAT, which again is where they list out how they comply with web accessibility standards. And I saw that it is screen reader accessible. They noted some issues deep in their settings, but for posting and for sharing and all of the normal functions, it was screen reader accessible. For any tool, and Padlet is one of them, some of it will depend on what users upload. So just like Laura said, if somebody uploads an image and that image doesn't have any description and it is conveying meaning, it's up to the user to actually explain what the image is. Now, Padlet does allow for alt text, or Padlet does allow you to write right in the description what the image is showing, but some of it's going to depend on what users do. So you would need to guide your students in how they post to make sure everyone can participate.
Excellent. Thank you for that description. And for anyone who needs to know, if you're not familiar with the term alt text, it stands for alternative text. And if we have a picture, then and it might be a chart or a graph that shows rainfall in Wilmington, Delaware, that we might describe that bar chart, the information, in words in case that person wasn't able to see it. Or as I talked about the dog in the field, that we have words to describe that image, we call them alternative text. Interestingly, they have a limit. Do they still have a limit, Christina? They did it's 140 characters, or is it a little bit longer now?
A lot of alt text will have a limit. I don't know about Padlet specifically, but I know a lot of places do. There are workarounds to that. Again, you can write in the description, an image description. But yeah, I do hit that limit sometimes.
It was about the limit of what tweeting used to be.
Yeah.
when tweeting had those limits. And so if you find that your picture needs more description, like rainfall in Wilmington might need more description, then you can create a caption for that chart that it's right there. Or when we build our bright space pages in D2L, we can have, they're called accordions, that it lives inside this little box that can open up and have all these words to describe that picture, and then they can close them. That's helpful for not only your students who might need site assistance, but also any students who might need that description of what that chart is, because they are approaching what the instructional purpose is. They're not quite there yet, and that description that they can read can also support them. So when we're looking at accessibility, we're not always only helping the students who have disabilities. We are often inadvertently helping other students in our classes as well. We have and if we look at engaging, well, Padlet is this thing that everyone can post on it and they can like it. It's a little bit like social media too. They can like it or they can give it an emoji, things like that. And the human connection can be very strong because you have that opportunity to interact, go back and forth. When we look at ThingLink, oftentimes ThingLink is a tool that you might see in some of your courses or that you might have used, that it's an image. And on that image, there are little dots that someone could click on to find out more information about that portion of the picture or that topic. Sometimes those little dots will give a link to a video or another web page where you can learn more. So it's another way to convey that information. There are other things you can do with ThingLink as well, but that's a real basic approach to it. So if we think about that, the accessibility can be limited, especially if I'm putting this image up as my background and I have these dots, then I don't have it described somewhere else on the page. There is an accessible version of things that you can do with ThingLink, but the biggest issue with it is, for me, if I only have these little dots and they're not numbered, it'll say something like tab 1, but it's not labeled tab 1, so I don't really know for sure where that is. So I have some concerns about that, and sometimes I'll end up taking that alternative version of it, I'll retype it so that it describes it better, and then I'll put those words into my Brightspace course rather than just taking that link that ThingLink provides. So it's being strategic about what you're doing with it and being cognizant of when it helps, what are its limitations, how do we boost it? ThingLinks can be very engaging. I mean, you can click on things and get to new places. The connection's moderate, it kind of depends on why you're doing it. If you're not familiar with Brightspace surveys, these are things that are inside of your courses that are kind of like quizzes, but there's no grade. So you can set it up and students can engage with it and they can answer questions. You can set up with multiple choice things, or you can ask them, how's it going in class? What have you learned so far? What questions do you have? You can have surveys online available. And for some students, they'd rather participate in that than say those questions out loud. You can make them anonymous, or they can have names on them also. So it depends on your purpose once again, but those are typically accessible unless you put an image up and don't provide the alternative text, the alt text. They're often engaging because you have to click or type something. And the connection, it strengthens that feedback loop between the instructor and the student. So that's where it really helps. Other students don't see each other's surveys unless you get a report of, say, a pie chart or the results or something like that, and then you share them as an instructor. Otherwise, they don't see other responses. I'm curious, of these tools that we talked about, for instance, we had Mentimeter, Slido, we had Kahoot. Let's think about one of those tools and think about the accessibility of those tools. Does anyone want to use one of those, or do you have a different one we could analyze? Let's try Kahoot, because Kahoot, oftentimes we've used Kahoot or we've experienced something like Kahoot. Kahoots can be like that bar trivia too. I don't know if you've gone to bar trivia and you have to put into your phone or put into a little responder what it is. So sometimes they can be like that too. Or some of those restaurant trivia ones that they have. So let's think about a Kahoot. It's a quiz show, basically, is what it is. So how accessible, Nella's laughing at me. How accessible is...
This is clearly my group. This is my tribe right here.
Okay, all right, Nella. So let's think about what's the accessibility of Kahoot. You said that you've used it before.
Yes, I don't typically teach, I administrate, but I've seen it used in the classroom, even in my master's courses, and but I know my instructors use it as well. It's great. It's interactive. Pretty much everyone has a cell phone nowadays. I do have a couple high schoolers in my programs who don't, but they can usually pair up with a student who does have a cell phone. So, but it's accessible because most of us have cell phones, smartphones, and you just have it's like a link, like a pound you know, in like a 5-digit number, I think it is, and you go right to the link or to the quiz, and you just fill it out. The other thing is that it's anonymous, right? A lot of, you spoke about this a little bit earlier when you said some people don't feel comfortable expressing their ideas or their perspectives in the classroom. This is a great way to bring that out without singling anyone out. Because even that can sometimes, we live in a political climate where you can have arguments in a classroom, and we don't want that. So this is a great way to do that, have everybody's voice heard without singling anyone out. And it's fun, and it is accessible, I think.
Terrific. Excellent. And I'd like to help you draw a distinction too, because sometimes when we think about accessibility, we think about availability. So I love that you pointed out how available this is, because it's available on phones, computers, through QR codes, through links. People can get there. And so as instructors, or even if you're presenting some a meeting in operation, something like that, you could even throw a little Kahoot in there and have a little fun, right?
I'm gonna
Because
do that
they
now.
can get there. And then with the accessibility, a lot of times our focus on that is, for instance, can someone easily use this? So for instance, can I use keyboard arrows if I'm on a computer to get to those choices? Or do I have to use a mouse? Or do I have to, things like that? And Christine, I saw that you unmuted. What would you like to add?
Yeah, I'll share my own accessibility instance. I've used Kahoots a million times. You know, I'm a strong Kahoot user, but one little hiccup I did run into, I have had some students in the past who had processing, different processing challenges. And with Kahoots, there is often a timer. So by the time they have processed the information on the screen, we have moved on. Now, having it anonymous helps to avoid any stigma or any embarrassment with that. And also keeping them for just either checks or for engagement, or not something graded, helps to avoid that too. Another way to help with that, you can extend the time. Yeah, quizzes is another one. You can extend how long the question stays on the screen. And there is a way, if you really wanted to, you can do Kahoots asynchronously. And you can have the time extended there too. So that student who maybe didn't get a chance to play live, just because in this case, the student I'm thinking of, he just physically could not click the screen fast enough. He could go again later, and he could do it on his own too.
Fabulous. Yeah, when I was teaching elementary school, Nella, I loved how you pointed out that it can be anonymous, and that can be so helpful. And then sometimes I used to tell them, I said, you at least need to put your initials in there, because sometimes I used it to get an idea of where they were in their understanding. But I think you really have to set that up with your class. Like you said, that it's okay if you didn't get it right. It's okay, because we're learning from this, versus you didn't get it right, you know, and then everyone can, you know, go after you or something like that. So Nella, I love that you pointed that out, especially with adult learners. Sometimes that anonymity is even more powerful with adult learners than it is with kids. So I love that you pointed that out too. So the engagement though, Nella, what would you think? Highly engaging?
Absolutely. It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a game, right? And what about the human connection?
I mean, in the past when we've used it, you kind of reading the room. You realize, oh, there's other people like me who think like me, or wow, I'm in the wrong place. This is not my tribe. But yeah, it's fun to know. I mean, isn't that what education is? Isn't education about really opening your perspective and opening the door to other perspectives? You know, because we only know what we know. We don't know anything beyond that. And so really that's the human connection, is getting to hear another view, another ideology, whether you agree with it or not, just having that knowledge. And, you know, that's really what we're all here to do, whether it's CNA class or criminal justice or political science or anything else. It's really just gaining perspectives.
That's fabulous. Thank you for saying that. And I loved how you were pointing out that they say, "Wait, I can have that sense of belonging because I can see that. And admittedly, I used quizzes in my abnormal psychology class, which is very similar to Kahoot. It's structured just a little bit differently. And when 90% of the people got it wrong, I thought, oh, we got to reteach that that element. Okay, this is good. It was also good for me as an instructor to be able to see, and we could analyze, was the question poorly asked? And that was why it led you to the wrong answer, or did we not cover this well enough so it didn't help, people didn't feel like they had a good understanding of that concept. So it was a nice tool to use to kind of analyze. I like to use it as a pretest so I could get a real feel for what students knew before they actually went into the test. So there's different ways. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say that was a really great point, what you just said about really comprehension and recognizing, is it something that I've failed to really relay in the classroom? Or maybe there's a different way I can teach it to really get them to comprehend what it is that I'm trying to say. Because we often get in our own heads. We understand it, and so for us it's easy to understand, but it's relaying the information in a way that they can digest it. So it is great, it's just as great for an instructor to gauge that comprehension.
Excellent, excellent. And you were making me think about how we talked about different cohorts of students too, different groups from semester to semester, that two groups of students might do very well with that question because they've come with a lot of background and they are a little bit, I was an adjunct at University of Delaware before, and I had one group of students that they were very insulated. They might have had helicopter parents or lawnmower parents who mowed down all the obstacles for them. Who knows, right? But they had a very different view than the ones I taught after that, who had all traveled abroad and taken some classes in some other place at least once. And we had a student in there who was a non-traditional student, which is different at University of Delaware. We have it all the time at Delaware Tech, but we had someone in there who she was, I would say mid-40s. I'm a terrible judge. But she had been a paraprofessional for years in classrooms and was finally deciding that she wanted to pursue her degree and certification to become a teacher. So it was a whole nother view that was brought to the discussions in the class as well. And so those two different groups of students interacted differently with the same content. So I had to adjust how I was teaching them and interacting and what scaffolding or supports I offered to help them access the information. I love that you pointed that out. All right. So we talked about this EdTech rubric with some things just to be able to think about. One of the things that we talked about when we were preparing this also, you might add a fourth column. Maybe it's purpose. Why am I doing this? What do I want to do? So for me, it was a pretest. I want to get the information about where are they? How are they analyzing this? Maybe it was to help summarize a tough lesson that we just did. So I'm having them do this tech tool to help them summarize and process it. So think about your purpose. And that might be another thing for the EdTech rubric to decide, is it useful or not? Does it meet my purpose? Or is it noise and flashy? We wanted to reiterate accessibility. You hear us talk a lot about accessibility because it is so important to help all of your students be able to interact with your instruction. And for instance, even if you're using spell check, for inclusivity. And I love it. Christina just put in digital accessibility webpage that is offered from CCIT to help support you in your effort. But again, things to think about. We talked about alternative text. We talked about closed captions for videos, but captions on images as well can give more information. Color contrast. So I'm not sure if I'm in love with the white on the orange, but there's enough of a contrast we can kind of see it. But if that white was on a more of a lemon yellow, then that would be, it wouldn't be as visibly available to any of us. I have a hard time seeing that if it was white on lemon yellow. And the other thing to think about too is if we have, sometimes we have that tendency, we'll write something in red, pay attention to this, it's in red. But if someone's colorblind, they won't notice that it's in red. So you have to give some other kind of indicator, make it bold faced, something like that. So there's another thing besides just color that's indicating it. And we talk about headings and we talk about multiple means of access. So we might have a video, or we might have an article. We might have different ways that people can get that same information to access it. Maybe they need to do the dishes or take care of their children, but they can listen to it. So we are giving them different ways to be able to access the information. To learn more about accessibility as well, we have the digital accessibility webpage, and there were presentations at the PD Day on October 15th that also help support you with accessibility. If Christina finds those, I know she'll pop them in there. All right. Since she presented one of them, I know she's got it somewhere, but
I don't know if they've been posted yet. I know they've been shared, but
oh, okay. So the videos might not be posted, but stay tuned because they will be. Jack's here. He knows.
I'm gonna say
He's got a million of them to do. So we're giving him grace, and all's good. It's all good. All right, okay. So what we're talking about here is we don't want to be anti-tech. We want to be intentionally human, though. So we want to recognize the technology tools that are useful and how they help enhance us as humans and help encourage that human connection that we have between instructors and students, to be able to help our students access that instructional information more easily. Thank you very much for being here. If you have any thoughts or questions that you would like to share, let me know.